Sup you beautiful people. Hope you've had a fantastic day. Welcome back to another new episode of What If Deku Joined the League of Villains. Don't forget to shower some appreciation onto the incredible author responsible for this fanfiction. The link is conveniently waiting for you in the description box down below. If you guys enjoy this what if, comment down below and let me know. And go ahead and check out other what ifs in the channel after watching this video. Before we get into it though, don't forget to subscribe and leave a like, and also share this video with your friends. So let's start this video. The video of All Might's battle with Jirou was everywhere. Not just on the TV, it was circulating across the internet. It had already reached as far as the US and parts of Europe. The image of All Might being defeated and Jirou's form towering over him victoriously was viciously burned into the minds of every single person who watched it, hero and villain alike. With Hades' forces continuously advancing against them, the Commissioner-in-Chief of Police had no choice but to order a mass retreat, or else they would lose everyone. Several were successful in escaping, but many others were not. The raid had ended in complete and utter failure as Izuku predicted. What was even worse was the reaction of the populace. When the raid ended, shops and businesses closed up early, children were silently picked up from school by their parents and taken home, and various events were suddenly cancelled. When everyone arrived home, they locked the doors and closed the curtains as a means to hide. Some made phone calls or sent emails to get out of the country. There was virtually no activity online or physically. The streets were left empty and quiet. So quiet. Before they would have screamed at the heroes for their failure with reporters and civilians alike mercilessly condemning them. But this was so much worse. Because it meant one thing, they never believed nor wanted to believe possible. All Might had lost. The villains had won. The Hero Commission. The president sighed heavily as she hung up the phone. The evacuation had mostly been successful with some drawbacks. But the result was the same. They had failed. Deku had warned them. He had been extremely specific about their opponents and the outcome, but they had been brushed off by almost everyone. The president had expected casualties, no plan was perfect after all, but even she had encountered the possibility of All Might losing. He was All Might after all. In hindsight, it was never a good idea to rely solely on one man, she admitted. It leads to over-reliance by some, and a lack of self-confidence in many others. It also degrades the performance capabilities of others like the police. She let out another sigh, this time one of exhaustion. I suppose it's pointless to complain. What's done is done and can't be undone. She looked to where Hux was, or should have been. He was gone. You never were one for patience, were you? She muttered softly. Hux knew what his orders were. How he went about them was another matter entirely. Perhaps she should consider contacting Butler for an extra hand. Such meetings and alignments between them were rare, but they did happen. Their members and resources were extremely efficient, and they achieved excellent results in the jobs they were hired for. Then again, perhaps not. It appeared Razor, Deku's combat instructor, was still in Japan. Vague rumors mentioned she was cooperating with the hero killer, although not part of his mission. If Deku could get her assistance, then he could also get Stain's. Morally, she knew it was a bad idea to work with a serial killer and a mercenary like them. Pragmatically, however, she knew their skillsets could prove very useful against Hades. As for their body count, well, who was she to judge given the commissions, and by extension herself? Because blood would be shed in the days to come. And if they wanted to defeat Hades, they needed Deku and other unsavory individuals to help with it. Their former assassin included. Deku City Central Tower. Thank you all for coming here on such short notice, Riki Yatsubashi, Akari Destro, said to his subordinates. The video of All Might and Jirou's battle, specifically the ending, played on the wall behind them. It was a shocking sight, even for them. If you had told me this would be our main story today, I would have thought you'd gone mad. Grand Commander Chidasukazuki, Akakurious, said sardonically. Believe me, I wish that were the case, Riki replied grimly. There was a brief silence between them all. Will, Cheaton paused. Will this affect our plans? Overall, it will, Tomoyasu Chikazoku, Aka skeptic, admitted. But in the long run, yes. All Might's defeat will inspire many villains to rise up again, Koku Hanabata, Aka Trumpet, explained. Some will join up and seize power, will at the same time wage war with other villains, to establish the hierarchy of top dog. Hades is the biggest contender right now, but groups like the League of Villains and Shai Hasekai won't sit still. However, while this will cause problems for us, it will narrow down our enemies as they slaughter each other in droves. Additionally, with their war waging, many civilians will feel powerless and look to correct that, especially now that faith in heroes and the authorities has dwindled lower than before. It will be the perfect time to rally and recruit them to our ranks. It was the ideal scenario for the Meta Liberation Army. A chance to eliminate competition, expand their numbers, and gain more power for the day of their upcoming rebellion. Hades, particularly Jirou, was a major obstacle in their goals. Their previous dealings with them established a neutral relationship between them. However, they knew they would have to destroy them eventually. In a world where humanity was finally free to use their quirks as they pleased, those who practiced slavery had no place. The same could be said for the League of Villains. Shigaraki's faction was a group of children without a cause raising a ruckus. Atrocity's faction was nothing more than a group of psychopaths reaping chaos and destruction wherever they went. Both would be eliminated soon enough. Other groups like the Hasekai still had their uses though. Bite your trumpet, Rikio applauded. As troubling as this situation is, it also brings forth many opportunities. With All Might out of the picture, our plans will go much more smoothly. A smile formed at the edge of his lips. For the time being, we do nothing. Let these villains tear each other apart. And when the time comes, which it will, our revolution will begin. Placing his right hand on his forehead making a finger gun, the other members quickly followed suit. For humanity's true freedom. For humanity's true freedom, they shouted. Overhaul's office. Like many others, Kaichisaki, aka Overhaul, was shocked at the news. All Might being defeated was not something he had anticipated at all. He was not entirely surprised that Shiro had been the one to do it though. Out of all the villains in Japan, he was one of the strongest and most competent that there was. Kai was smart enough to refrain from fighting him and making an enemy out of him. The Hasekai and Hades occasionally had squabbles, but never anything too serious. That aside, he'd ordered his men to be on high alert. When All for One died, there was an explosion of conflict in the criminal underworld. Various villain groups rose up to claim power, wanting to become the new king, now that the Demon Lord was dead. Himself included. But this would unleash hell on earth. A knock at the door brought him back to reality. Overhaul, Harikorono, aka Chronostasis, greeted. The underlings are on guard as requested, so no incident so far. Kai rolled his eyes. It had only been an hour since the video had aired. Of course, nothing had happened yet. People didn't act that quickly, well, most of them. Although, Rappa appears to want to fight Shiro now, Hari admitted. Seriously, Kai deadpanned. Is he? Actually, never mind. I already know the answer to that one. Tell him if he even dreams about it, I will obliterate his existence and not bring him back this time. Understood. Hari nodded. Good. Tell me, when will that man be arriving? He said gently. 3 days at the earliest, 5 at the longest, Hari responded confidently. Not perfect, but better than nothing, he said tiredly. Tatara can keep looking after Iri. In the meantime, we'll continue to do what we've been doing. Hari nodded before leaving. Kai sighed to himself. Ever since the Tenem incident, he had sought out an individual with an ability like that one to make his operation go smoother. He never would have considered it before, but the world was full of surprises. Izuku just so happened to be one. Shigaraki's group. Ha 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 ha. Tomura roared with laughter as he replayed the video over and over again. Shiro standing victorious over Might's beaten body, on live TV no less, was the best thing that had happened to him in weeks. He probably should have felt guilty considering what Shiro did to Deku, but after the symbol of peace smashed his master's head in front of everyone and struck a winning pose like from one of his games, it was extremely satisfying to see him on the receiving end for a change. Okay, so maybe it was somewhat downplayed from Atrocity's cheating during it, but still very cathartic, nonetheless. Wow, you're happy. Toy said. You're the most fucking miserable out of all of us. Can you blame him, darling? Magni exclaimed. He hates All Might, especially after Kamino. She swapped to a whisper. Although I wouldn't be surprised if Atrocity was at the top of his most hated list. Kurogiri for his part appeared unimpressed. Shiro was a problem to deal with later, but right now their main concern was Atrocity. Right now, Toga was out gathering information about a possible base of his. When she returned, that's when they would decide their next course of action. Kurogiri had briefly considered going to Dr. Yujiko for help, but he had no idea where to start looking for the man. He kept his identity secret from all but All for One, and Viper to a certain extent. At the very least, he could count on him not to aid Atrocity. The Gantamachia was not an option either. Not just because of the level of destruction he could do, but because he was not in the location where Sensei had specified. It seemed they were truly on their own. The only saving grace about this situation was Izuku was safe from all this madness. There were many things Shiro and Atrocity would do to him, things he did not want to think about. If it was far away or in the clutch of the heroes, then it was a small price to pay. I just got off the phone with Toga, Compress announced. She says she found something. That put everyone on alert. Shigaraki stopped looking at his phone and gazed straight at their resident warper. Bring her here, Kurogiri, he ordered. If she found something on Atrocity, I want to know. As spectacular as All Might's defeat was, he would not feel truly satisfied until he had put his hand through his master's murderer's head and turned his body to dust. Atrocity's group. Appearing through a screen, Deepbolt. How rude. Atrocity said sarcastically. When one of his subordinates had been called to talk, everyone agreed it should be Deepbolt, since he could safely talk through a phone screen, using his core to turn into pure electricity, because he was less likely to be killed. After that public shitshow of Deku must not be named, can you blame me? Deepbolt deadpanned. Atrocity chuckled. Not in the slightest. If it were me, I'd do the same thing. Deepbolt immediately noticed something was off about his leader. "You feeling alright?" he asked uncertainly. "You calmer than I thought you were going to be." Correction, Atrocity was acting calmer than everyone thought he would. When the video first aired, they expected loud shouts, swearing, bloody corpses, and even some destroyed property. Instead, they got silence, which somehow proved to be worse. "I will admit, I was unhappy with this little war, all personal reasons included," Atrocity said softly. "But the more I thought about it, the more I realized. Both sides have done us a huge service." The electric user felt a little confused by that. Luckily for him, Atrocity launched straight into an explanation. "Hades has taken a massive blow, something that will take time to recover from. The symbol of peace has fallen, thus leaving the hero community in a state of disarray. Society itself has become vulnerable and panicked. With these factors in place, the following is possible. The absolute destruction of Hades and Jirou, the collapse of hero society, and with All for One, gone the chance for a new king to claim the throne and rule everything." Deepbolt was breathing very slowly as he processed the information and its implications. "When you put it like that, boss, it does sound possible," he said before adding. "But with a lot of complications." He promptly cut him off. "I know. But all complications can be overcome with the right plan. Speaking of which, it's time to deal with the complication known as Tomura Shigaraki. I've sent Queen Bee out to leave a trail of breadcrumbs for him to follow." Deepbolt's eyes widened. "Once they arrive at the fake base, that's when we strike. First, we'll then down, thoroughly I might add. When that's done, I'll take their quirks and either keep them myself or give them to subordinates that can put them to better use. Finally, after they are made suffer being such nuisances, slaughter them. Not too quickly now, need to set an example after all. I may keep Shigaraki around as a toy for a while though, and that lizard of his. I need to relinquish boredom every now and then." Atrocity smiled cruelly. "After that complication, I'll deal with Jirou, then Quirkless Deku, next other villain groups, and finally hero society as a whole," he listed off. "And who knows, maybe I could get some new toys to replace the ones I broke or lost in the process. One can never have too many." Harbor. Buzz. 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 Razor stared down at her phone. She didn't recognize the ID. It could have been someone from Butler, but she seriously doubted it. She knew all the secretary's numbers, and this wasn't one. Her best bets were someone from Hades or the League, though she was not entirely sure. Curiosity got the better of her and she answered. "Who the fuck is this?" she asked sharply. Swearing straight off the bat, a male voice said. "Am I correct in assuming this is Razor I am speaking to?" "Depends on who the fuck's asking," Razor said softly. "A hero," the voice answered. "My name is Edshot." Razor raised an eyebrow. Well, she didn't see that one coming. "Shinya Kamihara," she addressed by name. "How the fuck did you get my number?" "Shino." "Of course, that bitch. We need your help." Razor didn't react. "We want to take down Hades." There was silence at the other end of the line. "No bullshit. Just straight to the point," she murmured softly. "I'll admit I like that. Unfortunately, I'm not taking any jobs at the moment. And my partner, well, I don't think you'll want to work with him." "I'm not hiring you," Edshot stated. "But if Izuku Midoriya Deku asks you, will you help?" Razor wasn't fazed in the slightest. "Willing to use a child to get to me now, are you?" "Gotta say, that does not match up with your profile description," she said. "I'm not. Unfortunately, that boy is involved in this, voluntarily or not. I won't force him to help us, but according to Shino Shiro will be coming after him soon as will others," he said firmly. "She also told me that you would help if he asked. So, cutting all shit as you would put it, will you?" After a long minute, Razor smirked. "You've balls, ninja boy, I'll give you that," she said amusedly. "If, and only if, he asks me. Free will, no coercion. As for my partner, I still don't think you'll be willing to work with him. I think you'll find I'm much grayer than most heroes," the number 5 hero declared. "The Heights Alliance." Izuku stared out into the city from his balcony, as the sun slowly set, signaling the end of the very eventful day among many other things. The city was quiet. Too quiet. He couldn't hear any traffic or crowds from outside the barrier, only the sound of birds chirping. It was unnerving. While he was not surprised that Hades had won, he had clearly underestimated the impact it would have on society as a whole. Not just the heroes losing, but All Might losing. Often he had heard many villains wanting to kill All Might, Tomura included, but had they ever considered what would happen afterwards? He certainly hadn't. The reason was that All Might had never been beaten before. Yes, he was a man. Yes, he had limits. Yes, he was not invulnerable. Izuku knew all of this, and yet, the fact that he had lost still shocked him to the core. The only reason he could think of was that he was still trapped in his childish mindset from a year ago. A mindset perhaps many others shared. In the aftermath of the raid, the teachers had not come to check on him. And his classmates, upon witnessing All Might's defeat, just sat there frozen, jaws open and eyes wide for what felt like an eternity. Izuku for his part stood up and walked away. There was nothing he could say or do to comfort them. Hell, he was too shocked himself. Of all the things he expected, the stunt Jirou pulled was not one of them. Izuku had never seen or heard of anything described like that during his time at Hades. However, he was almost certain Rika had been the one to create it, or at least aid in its creation. Many villains and heroes praised her abilities at Hades. Jirou himself noted she was one of his best finds, and that, literally quoting, "the fucking jackoffs up there were too bigoted to recognize a precious gem when they saw it." Izuku went to bed without setting an alarm, since there would be no classes tomorrow. The only thing he had on was an appointment with Hound Dog. Dream sequence. Izuku walked slowly down the black corridor. There was no one around that he could see. He was looking for something or rather someone. He glanced down at the gun in his hand. Wait. When did he get a gun? Where did he get one? Something was wrong. This was all wrong. Despite this shock, he continued to walk. He came to a door and peered through slowly as a sign of caution. Why was he being cautious? In a split second, the doorway was gone. The corridor was gone. He was in a large area surrounded by nothing but darkness. He could see the floor clearly as well as his own body, but other than those there was nothing. Deku, a familiar frightened voice whispered. Izuku turned and found who he had been looking for, held back by a white cane strangling him by the neck. Run. Izuku tried to speak only to find that he couldn't. Why couldn't he speak? It seems my message has not gotten through that thick stupid skull of yours yet, a condescending voice sneered. This is my property, which means I can do whatever the fuck I want with it. If I tell it to kneel, it will kneel. If I tell it to kill, it will kill. If I tell it to spread its legs open as it should, it will spread its legs open. Because it's my property, it does whatever I want whenever I want. It belongs to me and not you. Do you understand? This wasn't Hades. Izuku what this was, and who this was. And he knew what he wanted to do to them. Raising the gun, he glared at the man hatefully. Jin isn't property. He snarled. He's a human being. Bang. Dream sequence end. Izuku shot straight up, grabbing the nearest object and throwing it straight at the wall in front of him. It was just a pen, however, the way he threw it and the strength he used left it embedded in the wall. He panted heavily as he let his rage and hatred fester. It had been a very long time since he thought about that monster. Izuku hated many individuals, but that man was unique in that he had only known him for a short amount of time, and yet he managed to become someone Izuku hated way more than his childhood bullies, and even Jirou. 10 members came close, but they were all dead now, the one good thing Jirou had done. Izuku lay flat on his back as he thought about the other aspect of his dream. A sad expression came to his face. Twice, he murmured softly, "Are you okay?" Later. When he woke up again later, Izuku immediately decided to hit the showers. God knows he needed one. So, do you want to talk about it? Kai asked, sounding concerned. No need, Izuku said firmly. Hot water crashed down his hair and flowed down his body. I will be talking about it with Hound Dog later. And also, is there a specific reason you are naked right now? It was true. As soon as he entered the shower, Kai appeared right next to him wearing nothing. My outfit changes depending on the situation, he shrugged. And your psyche. You were having a shower, so I changed to match that. Joy, Izuku responded sarcastically. Izuku suddenly found himself trapped against the wall with Kai's hands planted against them to prevent an escape. Kai stared deeply into Izuku's eyes, his voice neither cruel nor compassionate, just serious. Look Izuku, this is going to keep happening until you sort out your shit, deep as it is. I might look like Kai Chisaki, but my personality and mannerisms are made up of other bits and pieces from you. You want my advice? Get to it. Izuku scowled while crossing his arms. Easier said than done. I know, Kai agreed. But sitting on your ass while other shit is going on isn't going to do you any favors now, is it? Izuku said nothing. By the way, why is the naked aspect of me annoying you? It's nothing you haven't seen before, well, maybe not from the real one. Or is it to do with what happened when the elevator collapsed? Kai mused. Okay, no. Not doing this, Izuku finished up and grabbed a towel. That's one thing I never planned to discuss with anyone. Kai opened his mouth only to be swiftly cut off. Nothing happened between us. We just, ended up in some awkward positions. That's all. Kai started laughing hysterically, causing Izuku to leave the shower in a hurry. Hound Dog's office. Okay, I know you probably want me to talk about Hades and how I felt during it, but after the dream I had last night I just don't want to, Izuku deadpanned. So, can we talk about something else please? Sure, Ryo shrugged. I wasn't going to anyway. Ha. Seriously? Izuku's eyes widened. Of course, Ryo nodded. I've learned from experience that making someone discuss something traumatic that happened to them will not help them heal. Coax them into doing so maybe, but otherwise never force them. Well, Izuku's opinion of him just skyrocketed. Great, he said before looking down. What I want to talk about is related to the dream. Izuku took a moment to compose himself. As a hero, have you ever let anyone die before? Izuku asked slowly. Ryo's eyes widened. Where did that come from? And I don't mean you couldn't save someone, I mean you literally left them to die, Izuku explained, somehow managing to remain calm despite severity of his question. Either you just left them there, or you let someone else kill them. Ryo stared at Izuku with an unreadable expression. The question caught him off guard, but years of practice enabled him to keep calm. No, he denied. I have not. Nor have any of my colleagues. I'm a hero, after all. Such behavior would be unbecoming since we are supposed to save others. Even if you think they deserve it, or maybe because them dying would stop a lot of future problems. Izuku pressed. Even then, Ryo confirmed. I'm supposed to stop them, not kill them. I don't have that right, nor does any other hero. Izuku stared down at his lap with an expression Ryo could only assume was either shame or uncertainty. Fair enough, he admitted. It's just something I've wondered about before. So? Ryo repeated. My dream, well, maybe not dream, more of a memory, Izuku explained. Just before Kamino there was an incident. Unlike Hades, I remember this one quite well, though there are moments I wish I didn't. Ryo tensed. He hadn't heard of anything like this from the police. One of my colleagues, twice, he had a difficult time before the league and he. Izuku started to clench his fists tightly. Anyway, he had this job, which he left. He felt sick describing it as that. And his boss, he wanted him back. Ryo flinched at the tone of Izuku's voice. It sounded angry, very, very angry. Twice didn't want to, and we, the league, didn't want him to. It led to a dispute that got resolved, violently. Izuku couldn't believe how much he was downplaying the events, but remembering how he ranted around the Yagami, he wanted to make sure his counselor wasn't disturbed. It was resolved, but I swear that man, I actually wanted him to die, and I almost let one of the others do it for what he did to twice. Izuku could still see Toga holding the knife to his throat. Why he stopped her, he couldn't remember. Even now, I still think I should have let them. Ryo observed Izuku with a mixture of curiosity and fear. Compared to other moments when he talked about someone he disliked, this one he showed nothing but pure hate. It was almost unnerving. He knew the person Izuku was referring to. Jinbei Aka twice. He vaguely knew his record, but not much. He was considered a small criminal until joining the league. Just what sort of relationship did he have with Izuku? Letting him die wouldn't have solved anything. Izuku gave him a pointed look. Your friend was still in trouble, right? Killing that person might not have been the best way to help him. Debatable, Izuku inwardly muttered. There are people who deserve to die. People who represent the worst humanity has to offer, be a villain or something else entirely, Ryo said softly. But you shouldn't have to be the one who has to make that choice. And who should? Izuku asked almost half-heartedly. I can't answer that one, unfortunately, Izuku rolled his eyes. Of course. Well, thanks I guess, Izuku stood up. If you want a full story, ask Tsukauchi and Yugami. I may have given them an honest account, a bit too honest maybe, of what went down. Thanks for listening. It's my job, kid. It's my job, Ryo waved goodbye. Midoriya, if you don't mind me asking. Izuku stopped at the door. Whatever happened to that person? Last I heard he was dead. Killed by one of his own men, he said. Never found the body though, so I doubt it. Izuku's room. Izuku lay on the bed and stared at the ceiling. Following the session, he'd gone to the gym where the punching bags took the brunt of his frustration. The illusion of Kai had been surprisingly quiet since the showers, though he wasn't sure why. Izuku's phone started to ring. Checking the ID, he noticed it was his mother. He didn't really want to talk with her right now, but he also didn't want to worry her. Holding it up to his ear, he pressed the answer button. Hey mom, he murmured. Deku, a very familiar voice answered. Izuku's blood froze. His breathing began to slow as the temperature in the room rapidly dropped. Shiro, he whispered. Good to see you remember me, kid, Shiro responded merrily. I figured it was time we talked. Izuku lay still on the bed in the same position for an uncertain amount of time. His breathing had become tense and shaky. Sweat began to leak through his clothes. How? He stuttered uncontrollably. Why? How did you get my mother's phone? Why do you have it? Followed by the two most important questions of all. Where is mom? What have you done with her? Questions he wanted to ask, but lacked the stability and mental fortitude to do so. Why do I have mommy dear's phone? How did I get it? Where is she? What did I do to her? Is she dead? Did I kill her? Am I holding her hostage as one of my slaves? Shiro listed off with a chuckle. Even on the phone, you are easy to read. You really need to do something about that. I'm surprised All For One never did anything to correct it, given his multitude of quirks. My condolences, by the way. I'm sure you're still grieving him along with Shigaraki and Kurogiri. Izuku didn't respond. He was still processing the situation and all its implications of it. So much that his breathing remained the same. Izuku, can I call you that? I feel like we've been through so much together at this point. You sound like you need a minute. Take it. Breathe in and out slowly like a good little boy, Shiro requested in a high and merry tone. Izuku did as he was asked, and, as best as he could manage, calmed down. Good boy. I knew you could do it. You can do anything if you set your mind to it. The crime boss's words of encouragement did nothing to soothe Izuku's nerves. Now, down to business. Where is she? Izuku demanded softly. Right next to me. Izuku's entire body froze. Oh, yeah. I invited myself in, your mom made tea, and then served your favorite, katsudon. I got a look at your baby pictures and by golly, you were so adorable back then, especially in that little All Might Odyssey. Speaking of which, your old room. I heard it was an All Might shrine, but seeing it in person, you were quite the fanboy last year, weren't you? Izuku was going to be sick. He could literally feel vomit starting to come up his throat as he violently fought to keep it down and under control. Something he was failing quite miserably at. Shiro, please, he stammered. Whatever you're going to do. This has been such an interesting visit, Shiro swiftly cut him off. Well, it would have been. If you know, I was actually here. The silence was deafening. Izuku was almost certain he had heard him incorrectly. What? He exclaimed. Oh, that. I'm not actually at your apartment, Shiro stated. I never was. I only said that because I thought it would be funny. And boy, you did not disappoint. Ha 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 ha. Izuku could hear laughter on the other end of the phone. It started off small but got bigger, louder, and more hysteric. But, her phone number, Izuku said, still not believing it. You have Kuchulin to thank for that. Apparently, some scammers in his country impersonated the local banks to get their customers details, and then robbed them blind. I thought I could do something similar. All that aside, your mom isn't anywhere near me, Izuku exhaled in relief. I thought it would be a good way to scare the shit out of you. Given your reaction, I'd say it was a success. At that precise moment, two specific emotions surged intensely through Izuku, one stronger than the other two. The first was overwhelming relief over the knowledge that his mother was nowhere near Shiro, and that she was safe, for now. And second, was sheer unrestrained unforgiving rage towards his former captor for initiating the act in the first place. It was so strong that it made Izuku temporarily forget his terror. Fuck you. You fucked up demented piece of shit dressed in a stupid tight-ass white suit. Izuku seethed in low voice. Okay first, that hurts Izuku, it really does. You can insult me as much as you want, but my outfits are off limits. Shida made them specifically for me, and by insulting them you're insulting him. Second of all, fuck me. No thanks. You're a bit young for me, Shiro replied nonchalantly. In that case, go fuck yourself. And if you can't do that, get Eros to do it for you. Izuku snapped back. No can do, I'm afraid. Doctor's orders, Shiro quipped. And trust me, Iwatani's quite serious about it. Just ask Akuma. So, Dr. Iwatani was still alive. That was good to hear. From what he could remember, the doctor was one of the longer residents of Hades who possessed a wealth of medical knowledge and a healing quirk that he hated. It was somewhat similar to Recovery Girl but more intimate. Izuku respected him for his reasonableness and resourcefulness. Izuku, I just want to talk, Shiro explained. Is that so wrong? Talk? Wrong. Izuku repeated slowly as if making sure he had heard it correctly. The last time we talked it involved you beating the living hell out of me in front of everyone in an All Might Odyssey, before trying to kill, which led to me putting a knife through your eye. And this is all after a month of making me a slave in your little hellhole. So, yeah. I'd say it's wrong. And I ripped it out afterwards, Shiro retorted. And I now wear an eye patch with pride as a symbol of my loss. We could go on about this for hours, Izuku, but it wouldn't get us anywhere. What's done is done and can't be undone. Izuku's face turned slightly pale. What he did was dangerous, and he'd done it out of desperation, but for Shiro to just tear it all out afterwards was even worse. He should have had one of the doctors do it instead. And, to talk about something so casually was just. I actually rang to say sorry, Izuku blinked. It appears you were right about graphene, you and the rest of the kids. Izuku suddenly felt lightheaded. He grabbed a bottle of water and gulped it all down within a minute. Graphene. He felt like he should know who that was but couldn't remember them. Pieces of his time in Hades had been coming back to him, including the things he had done, places he's gone, and people he met. He remembered why Shiro was angry at him, but for some reason, he couldn't remember the other person involved. He knew he had killed that person, by accident yes, but still. In all his dreams, graphene had never once appeared or been mentioned. Maybe because they had barely known each other in Hades. He didn't know. Why bother investigating now? Izuku asked, confused. Recent events, which I don't want to get into, have forced me to evaluate the people I trust and work with, Shiro admitted. There was a bitter edge in the way he spoke. As if he truly regretted not doing this sooner. That's why I'm apologizing. Back then, you were right, and I was wrong. I'm sorry. Izuku was surprised at how sincere Shiro sounded. The man wasn't above being humble, but it was rare for him to do so. For the record, that was just an apology, not a plea for forgiveness. If you want to hate me for the rest of your life you are well within your right to, Shiro clarified. Especially with what's coming next. And just like that, the conversation had returned to its tense atmosphere. You're coming after me, aren't you? Izuku said. It wasn't a question, but a statement of fact. I will, just not right now, Jirou clarified, much to the teen's confusion. I'm going to be a little bit busy over the next few weeks, so I won't have time. A bunch of idiots are going to try to take a shot at Hades while I'm down. Gotta step up and defend the territory, and all that. Izuku wasn't all that surprised. Sensei had warned him before about this situation when a high-rank villain was down. Especially with a fuckbag like Atrocity making his move. Watch out for him, by the way. The guy doesn't have a high opinion of people like you. And I can't have you dying before I get my hands on you now, can I? Of course, you could just surrender yourself willingly and save me the trouble. Izuku raised an eyebrow. You still want me after what I did? That was not something he had anticipated at all. Of course, Jirou assured. Missing eye or not, with your skillset you're worth a lot, Izuku. If you weren't, I'd just straight out kill you, but you do so. Izuku didn't answer. At that moment, he started to heavily weigh his options. If he did surrender himself, it's likely Hades wouldn't kill him and put him to work as they did before, although not before roughing him up a bit. There would be fewer casualties and could prevent his mother from becoming a target. However, it would involve him becoming a slave again, only this time voluntarily, which didn't sound very appealing. Especially since it would render everything he did to escape all for nothing. He could try running. Perhaps going underground or fleeing to another country. Razor taught him the skills to make it happen should it become necessary. The fact that Jirou was occupied right now made it easier. However, Jirou was not the only one after him. There was Atrocity's group, who Izuku didn't have any intel on. He didn't know where Tomura was either, as there had been no reports since Kamino. There was also the fact that he was confined to UA. If he set foot out even once, people would know. Then there was fighting, which didn't really settle him. For starters, how was he supposed to? He was severely lacking in numbers and resources to pull off such a feat. Perhaps he was just being lazy, since he only supplied information on their opponent's quirks and abilities, not coming up with a strategy, but still. Even when exhausted and beaten down, Hades was not to be underestimated. Then there was Razor. He still had her number, well, emergency number, but still. If Butler was as powerful as she described, then they could certainly help. Then again, they weren't the type to do things out of the goodness of their hearts, so there was still no guarantee. No matter what way he went about it, Izuku couldn't see himself, or anyone, coming out of it unscathed. Putting things simply, he was screwed. I'd advise against running, Jirou said softly. We both know I'd find you eventually. Kind of like how I found your mother. What? Izuku exclaimed. Jirou sighed at the other end. Izuku, I knew all about her when you first entered Hades. Afterwards, it wasn't hard to find where she lived and is still living, he explained. With limited hero protection, I might add. Once more, Izuku was frozen in place. He understood what Jirou was saying and the implications. But there was more to it. He knew there was. I could have gone after her anytime I wanted to, Jirou stated. Be it when you were with me, or when you returned to All for One. I didn't. Not because I didn't want to or because it wasn't worth the effort, but just because it wasn't convenient. If I had taken her while you were with the League, I don't doubt All for One would ensure you wouldn't find out. He paused to let words sink in. I could have sent anyone to collect her unless All Might was guarding her. Fortunately, he's out of the picture. And you know what that means, right? For villains in the entire country, it's open season. Izuku remained silent. He hadn't noticed it until now, but he was shaking, badly. His bad breathing had returned worse. Running definitely wasn't an option. Even if he got out, Jirou would get to his mother first. Well, that's all from me, Jirou announced. Gotta run into cover. I await your answer, Izuku. And please, take your time. I'm sure you'll make the right choice. And hey, if you decide to fight me, I'll welcome your challenge with open arms. Until then, try not to die. Bye. He hung up, leaving Izuku alone in the dark. He didn't move. He was too shocked to. Well, the apparition of Kai was leaning against the wall. You're certainly fucked. Understatement of the decade. At the same time, outside the room, Kyoka had not intended to eavesdrop. She really hadn't. She only came up because Shinsu had made coffee, very much appreciated, for everyone, and asked one of them to grab Midoriya. That was all she came to do. Unfortunately, when you are born with a quirk that boosts your hearing, you tend to overhear things you shouldn't. Unintentionally, of course. So, when she could hear Midoriya conversing with none other than the leader of Hades, well, needless to say, she was shocked. Even more so when she discovered Jirou wanted Midoriya back. Based on what little she knew of their relationship, Kyoka assumed the man would want him dead. Apparently not. The other parts of the conversation were something to dwell on. Should she get the teachers? She knew they were swamped with work, but she couldn't just let Midoriya leave. Nice guy or not, he was still a villain confined to UA. But letting him become a slave to the man who defeated All Might wasn't a much better option. Click. The door swung right open, with Midoriya wearing a frustrated expression accompanied by a disheveled appearance. Their eyes met, causing them both to freeze up. How long have you been standing there? He asked. Kyoka started, causing Izuku to groan loudly. You heard everything, didn't you? He deadpanned. Well, she tried only to be swiftly cut off. As the cat's out of the bag, Izuku deadpanned as he started walking off. Kyoka's eyes widened in disbelief as she hurried after him. Seriously? She exclaimed. That's it. Yup, Izuku deadpanned. That's it. Feel free to tell everyone downstairs. I'm gonna go take a shower. You're not going to escape? Kyoka asked, confused. Or maybe contact the League for help. You heard it yourself, that's not an option, Izuku reminded her. Also, I don't know where the League are or how to contact them, since they probably changed their numbers after I was captured. Heck, I don't even know if they're alive. He had tracked the news closely for any updates, but nothing came up. Well, he was confident that they could lay low and survive. He couldn't rule out the possibility of their deaths either. So you're just going to do nothing? Kyoka clarified. I'm not sure there's anything I can do, Izuku admitted. I'll use what time I do have to come up with a plan of survival. Until then, I'll sit here while everything else goes to shit outside. And believe me, it will go. He paused. On a completely unrelated note, why are you here, Jirou? Did you have something you wanted to ask me? Kyoka briefly hesitated. Shinsu made coffee for everyone. He sent me to get you. Izuku stared at her for a few seconds before heading towards the elevator. The showers could wait. Right now, he was in dire need of some caffeine. 25 minutes later. I should have made more coffee, Hitachi lamented. Yes, Izuku agreed. Yes, you should have. After Kyoka announced it, Izuku gave a basic synopsis of what happened, though not before chunking down a large amount of coffee. Wow. You certainly are a magnet for trouble, Nito deadpanned. And with little effort, I might add. What happens when you actually try? Don't know. Never tried, Izuku deadpanned back. For the most part I'm just lucky, or rather, unlucky. Nito and Hitachi both snorted while the others remained silent. Momo was concerned about the threat to his mother, not just for him, but what it meant for the rest of them. If Shiro could target his family, then realistically he could do the same to theirs. And thanks to the sports festival their names were public. Hey Midoriya, are you sure there's nothing you can do? Dark Shadow asked. Like nothing at all. You fought some of the strongest here and managed to come out on top. I think you'll find that first-year students are much easier to deal with than AS rank villains, Izuku pointed out. SS rank in Shiro's case. Doesn't answer the question, Dark Shadow pointed back. And didn't you beat those two from Hades by yourself? Oh, for the love of it, Izuku groaned. Dark Shadow, what you are asking for is essentially a miracle. If I wanted to free everyone, I'd need to be at the heart of Hades to turn off all the collars, which is nigh impossible thanks to security. And even if they were free, there's no guarantee they would side with me, since for many of them, Hades has become their home for years. Additionally, breaking in would require a team of elites and resources which I don't have. It would also need to be timed perfectly. He paused. Another thing, I didn't beat Shino and Blade, I fended them off, barely. If it were for Shinsu and Monoma and later the teachers, they would have won. There was an uneasy silence among the students. When he put it that way, it did sound impossible, the results of the raid making it worse. Even worse, they had all fought members of Hades, so they knew how strong they were. The three from the mall recalled how easily they had been defeated by Atlas, while the other two considered their own fight. The only reason they managed to pull off a win was because of the element of surprise, not because they were strong or anything like that. Nito himself would admit that despite his training from Vlad Sensei, he had never fought villains before. Ever pessimistic, I see, Kai appeared behind the chair Izuku was sitting on. And also, right. Izuku didn't say anything. The illusion of Kai appearing when he was around people now. Well, wasn't that just perfect? We could always sell you out to them, Nito suggested. Do a hostage trade and all that. Monoma! Momo exclaimed in horror. The other students appeared to share her sentiments. Kyoka appeared shocked, while Hitachi and Fumikage were disturbed by the idea. Even Dark Shadow was horrified as his mouth hung down open. Well, now that's just cruel, Kai complained sardonically. I like this one. No, that's quite pragmatic, Izuku replied nonchalantly. But ultimately pointless. Shiro doesn't do trades unless it is on his terms. Still, it was a smart idea, Monoma. That devious thinking of yours will be useful in the future. Pity, Nito said flatly. Are you seriously okay with the idea of being turned over to that madman? Kyoka asked incredulously. Izuku shrugged. Of course not. But even then, it's not like I wouldn't have it coming. You all seem to forget that I joined a villain organization which involved studying heroes, creating and working on cork drugs, working with a serial killer, being involved in the USJ, and attacking a student, not to mention having worked alongside several villains in the past. I may have been pushed towards this life, but it was still my choice to go through with it. At the end of the day, I'm still a villain. The only reason I'm here instead of prison is because of Atrocity. Izuku may have offered explanations for why he did what he did, but that's all they were, explanations. No excuses. Though he did feel he was justified in what he did to Bakugo, he mostly kept that part to himself. Actually, you're just a criminal, Nito corrected. Villain is defined by the government as someone who freely uses their court to commit crimes. Since you're quirkless you don't qualify. Izuku shot him a look. What? Not trying to be racist or xenophobic here. It's just the way it's defined by the law. Well, that's just fucking perfect, Izuku lamented. Quirkless people can't be heroes, and now we can't even be villains. That's not such a bad thing, Hitachi intervened. Believe me, villain is a much harsher label than criminal. He wasn't wrong either. Once a person became a villain, they were treated a lot more harshly by the law, even if they were minors. Kai patted Izuku on the shoulders. Don't worry Izuku, you'll always be a villain to me, the illusionary Kai reassured him. Although, I guess this is undercut by the fact that I'm a figment of your imagination. Izuku restrained himself from rolling his eyes lest he causes confusion. The last thing he needed was for people to catch on to his frail state of mind. I'm sorry but there's nothing I can do, Izuku admitted. If you want my advice, I'd say get back to your families and get out of the country while you still have the chance. It's quiet now, but that'll soon change. That was something much easier said than done. For Nito and Momo, it wouldn't have been an issue. Kyoka and Fumikage were slightly more challenged because of the financial and legal processes involved. Hitachi on the other hand was definitely stuck. He lived with his grandmother, and they only made enough to get by. There was something particularly chilling about the suggestion. It was one thing to move away from an area because of a problem, but another to literally move out of the country. That's how bad were things going to get. Later. Once again, Izuku was lying on his bed staring at the ceiling. His conversation with Jirou weighed on him heavily. Even though it was less than 2 hours ago for him it felt like a lifetime. Kamino. The hospital. Now, this. How had everything gone so far to hell in such a short time? No point mulling over it, Izuku, Kai declared. Gotta work on that big plan of yours. There's no plan, Izuku said flatly. I just made that up. Really? No survival plan like you told Jirou? Kai asked quizzically. Are you giving up? Don't know, Izuku's tone remained flat. The illusion silently stared at Izuku in contemplation for over a minute. What are you going to do then? He asked. Izuku let out a long loud groan. He sat up and glared furiously at the hallucination. What are you going to do? 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 He ranted. Seriously. Why the fuck does everyone keep asking me that? What do you all expect me to do? Go in there, snap my fingers and make everything okay again? I can't create miracles, Kai. The reason I have managed to stay alive as long as I have is pure dumb luck, and even that will run out eventually. Also, in case you forgot, I am 16. I'm not a leader or master tactician like Sensei was. I am a side character in this story, not the protagonist of some fucking shonen manga or fan fiction. I am a quirkless boy with no power or authority with high-level villains after me and locked in prison I can't escape from. So what, just what, the fuck do you all think I can do? Izuku was panting heavily as Kai stared at him with an unreadable expression. You can try asking for help, Kai suggested softly, causing Izuku's eyes to widen. That's the one thing you haven't done so far. Izuku looked at him confused. As a result, Kai rolled his eyes. You never pester anyone with your problems, you work yourself constantly to the point of exhaustion just to meet expectations, and you always think you have to do things by yourself. You'll always stick your business into someone else's and try to help them but never the opposite. Kai stared Izuku directly in the eye. I'm only going to say this once, Izuku, so pay attention. You are a self-absorbed, overworked, masochistic idiot who is just as bad if not worse than All Might. Izuku's jaw dropped, offended by the accusation. He was nothing like All Might. Although he did some of those things, but he had asked for help before, right? Yeah, he did when. Kurogiri coming to your rescue doesn't count, Kai stated firmly. Neither does Razor training you nor agreeing to work with me against Denim. Because your circumstances made them necessary. Whenever confronted with a problem though, you never ask for help. Not even from those who are willing to give it, not even your own mother. That's because, Kai immediately cut him off. Because you don't want to trouble anyone. Sorry to tell you this, but you can't keep using that excuse, Kai chastised. You'll end up dead otherwise, or worse, along with someone you actually care about. Izuku looked like someone slapped him hard across the face. Kai looked away and walked up to the window. What do I want you to do? I'm a figment of your imagination brought on by the culmination of stress and trauma, so what I want isn't fully relevant, but if I have to give you an answer, then I want you to do what's best for you. You're a very intelligent boy who's been sought out by the most powerful villains in Japan. You have allies here and out there willing to help you. Use them. If you want to fight, then fight. If you want to run, then run. If you don't want to do anything, then do nothing. Whatever you decide, don't do it alone. Kai vanished after that. When he would manifest again, Izuku didn't know nor care. That little speech, however, got him thinking. What he wanted to do, what he needed, how he would go about it, and who he would need to contact. All of which culminated in him saying this. Ugh, I hate my life. Later downstairs. Just so we're clear, I am not promising anything, Izuku firmly stated. But I do need to be sure of something before we can proceed. Everyone gazed at him attentively. First, would please take out a phone and dial a number I specify and delete it afterwards. I do it myself, but I was instructed a long time ago never to with my own nor hold it. Don't ask me why. He would need to call a lot of people who wouldn't normally be called. But if he wanted to succeed, he needed her first. Kyoka dialed the number he requested. For a few seconds, there was silence while the phone buzzed. Then it stopped and a familiar voice came through. Who the fuck is this? Razor demanded on the other end. The pathetic excuse of a student, Izuku deadpanned, but was smiling on the inside. I need your help. I want to take down Hades and that bastard Jirou with it. Thanks for listening. I do hope you enjoyed. If you want the next part of this video, like, subscribe and comment down below, and turn on the bell notification. And also check out other videos that I have created and enjoy. See you in the next video. Peace.